Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's CJ. I want to welcome you guys back to episode 9 of the Innovative Marine 75 EXT Reef build. Now, if you're new to my channel, that's right, there is 9 episodes so far, so make sure you go back to the playlist, check out everything that's happened up to this point, and get caught up so you stay in tune on everything that's happening. So in this video, we're going to start off with talking about protecting the tank. That's right, we're going to add another lid to the 75 EXT. Now, if you're new to my channel, I also added the same lid to the JBJ65. I've linked that video in the chat, so make sure you check it out if you're interested on how that worked out on an all-in-one style aquarium. Now, this time around, we're adding it to an external overflow aquarium. A little different measurements, a little different look, but hopefully the same protection and the same result, because these days, after touring some LFSs, fish prices that were $20 or $30 years ago have jumped to hundreds of dollars. So it really justifies spending the extra amount, getting a custom lid to fit your tank. Now, if you're not familiar with Clearview lids, I believe they also go by Artfully Acrylics, and they manufacture these polycarbonate custom lids, 3 different styles, and they have a few different tanks already measured up, I guess, from multiple people getting the measurement right. Unfortunately, the 75 EXT was not on that list, so I am still in the guinea pig phase of, getting this lid measured and hopefully it fitting securely and tight on the tank, especially with the arm mounts and different things I had to measure around. So if you're interested in this, check out their site. I will mention there is a little bit of a wait or delay, so you're not going to be able to order this because it is custom and expected to show up at your door the next day. I had to wait weeks for them to make this, and I had to wait even longer until I decided the final lighting options on the tank. So, with all that being said, once you get all that sorted out, put your order in. It's made in the USA. They ship it right to you. Comes nice and protected. And honestly, with this being my second time around, I fully expected top quality. Opening this up, I was not disappointed. Same company 3 years later, still the same solid product. Now, I feel like it's very important to mention, you have to test fit the lid before you peel off all the protective plastics and coatings that you see me peel in the video. I did test fit the lid, I just didn't record that part for you. I try to skip the boring stuff, try to get you guys right to the action and stuff you want to see. So I do a lot of time lapses, a lot of jump skips, a lot of editing to try to cut my videos down and, avoid the boring stuff, right? So I just want to make sure I mention that, because if you do get this lid, you don't want to, peel it off and then get it wrong. And then when you send it back, they can't reuse or, take that section off and fix it. It just save yourself a lot of trouble. Test fit it first before you pull it off. So as far as me, I happened to get it right this time. The lid actually fit the tank. It went on for the most part. I did have to adjust one of the arm mounts. I was off of my measurement by a slight bit, but as far as fitting on the tank itself, everything fit perfect. So pleasant surprise, because the first time I did this on the JBJ, I got it wrong and had to send it back. So why did I choose a custom lid for the 75 EXT build? Well, honestly, guys, it just fit the theme. The entire theme of this build has been nice, neat, clean, functional, everything that I wanted in the build to make this my best build ever. And, using a company that provided me a quality lid the first time around on the JBJ65, no brainer, reach out to them and, order another lid for the Innovative Marine 75 EXT. And I gotta tell you guys, not a surprise. It looks wonderful. I was more surprised about getting the measurement right this time around, but as far as how the lid looks on the tank, how seamless it is, and how it's not really intrusive, meaning it sets flush. You can barely see it if you're looking at it from eye level. And if you're sitting on the couch looking at the lid, you're really going to be more focused on what's in the tank than a clear piece of, plastic and mesh material that actually is setting on top of the tank. So, if you can get a protection for your investment, and by investment, these, 3 and 4 times priced fish from years ago, and then why not get you a custom lid that's going to fit your tank, no gaps, no spaces, and allow you everything you need with the protection you need, right? So, and I also ordered a few different things I want to make sure I mention. One being is going to be a feed door. This is something I feel like is very important. Now, I was undecided if I wanted this door on the front of the tank or the side. Thinking back, I may have chosen the side of the tank, but I'm still unsure. The main thing is making sure I can feed the fish without having to remove the entire lid. So I feel like a feed door is mandatory. The placement of it is optional. You can choose the side or the front of the tank. Now, I also want to mention gas exchange definitely is number one for me. With the amount of surface agitation, I always make sure I have. And a screen top that actually is UV protected, meaning it does not block UV going into the tank, but it does have UV protection on it. So you don't have to worry about this fading or degrading over time like any of the other lids that I've kind of seen on YouTube. But I'm definitely happy with how it looks. Now, one thing I also want to mention, this Pisces EXO lid, which is their newer model, is fully modular, meaning if something happened or if you had a change as far as your design or your setup, and you needed to, have an additional cutout added or, an additional mount added on your system, you can tell them and just send back that piece and be able to order it and, just have that added to the lid without getting a whole new lid. So, I definitely think that's great. And as far as the way it's made, kind of not being one solid piece, makes it a lot more lightweight. And it also helps prevent anything from building up on the bottom of the lid. So I'm really not noticing any droplets or any condensation showing. I also want to mention this. If you have tank mounts, make sure you wait until you have everything measured and everything finalized before you put the order in. Because the last thing you want to do, order some mounts, get your lid ordered, and then decide you want to hang it from the ceiling and have a gap in your lid for no reason, right? So as far as I can tell, everything fits snug. I'm able to remove the overflow covering. I'm able to look around the tank and not really find one spot for a fish to escape. So for me, I think I'm going to be able to close my eyes peacefully and not worry about anything getting out of the system. So this is going to be the last piece, guys. This was the last piece I was waiting on before adding fish to the display. The last thing I wanted to do was add a wrasse or, blue spot jawfish or any suicidal tendency fish to the system only to have them jump out. So we are finally protected. So if you find this video and you only wanted to see the lid information, you can stop it here because we're ready to move on and get a full update on what else has been going on over the last week or so. So stay tuned, stay locked in because we got more to do. So in episode 8, we stopped by Sandy's pet shop and, did a look around and picked up some fish. This episode stopped by another LFS, which is 5 minutes away from me, which is great. 2 LFSs within 20 minutes. You can't beat it. But this one is still under construction. They're still adding multiple tanks, display tanks, different systems. So we're going to revisit this one later down the road once they get, everything up and running and do a full store tour and interview with the owner. Because he was a basement guy that came up and purchased the store and is just, trying to make his dreams come true. So looking forward to seeing what this turns into. Great to find out that they actually quarantine their fish. And they also have tons and tons of live rock and rubble, which is perfect for what I needed. And that's adding biodiversity to the system. So we're going to take some of this home, add it to the tank, and hopefully, benefit the cycle and get everything going. Now, besides adding biodiversity, it's finally time to add microfauna to the tank. And by microfauna, talking about copepods, those little creepy crawly shrimp-looking things that, multiply in your tank. They don't start off in there unless you add them, via live rock or, hitchhike their way in on whatever items you add to the tank. But considering this system was thorough and started with dry man-made rock, have to add these guys and start working on building this population before I add fish. So pods of choice is going to come from Pod Your Reef. Now, there is a bunch of different, manufacturers and people out there who sell copepods. And Pod Your Reef is one I was not familiar with. Hopped on Google, located them, put an order in, and was happy with the amount of life that was in these jars and definitely added them to the tank. So the plan is simple. Build this population up as much as possible, knowing, my stock list plans is going to include a lot of pod eaters, the damsels, wrasses later, whatever else I decide to add to the tank. And not to mention, they're a major part of the cleanup crew plans I have for this system. Knowing that this is going to be a predator heavy tank, meaning stuff that eats hermits and snails and all of that, I'm really going to rely on a strong population of pods. So I do plan on adding these monthly for sure. And during the beginning stages of this tank, probably even more than that. So pods, phytoplankton, letting these guys build up in the tank, let them floating around. And hopefully, let these guys create a little pod hotel down in the sump, where the live rock rubble is located. And also leaving the system open, meaning not running a lot of mechanical filtration right now. Actually, I have none running. And these guys are able to run through the display, go through the biomedia, through the refugium section, back to the return section, and back up to the display. So with the system wide open, running for almost a month, almost done with the cycle, I'm really starting to see a lot of these guys kind of floating around the display and, walking around in the sump. And hopefully, this population will last. So for those that are curious, definitely adding pods. Want to make sure I share this in the video. And if you are cycling your tank, definitely make sure you add some as well, before you start adding all the fish. Now, for those of you all who watched episode 8, well aware, started my first QT/observation tank in the hobby. And I gotta admit, I was a guy who always believed he can eyeball a healthy fish in the LFS, and then roll the dice and order a fish online, mix and match all those fish together, multiple places, and, not end up with anything go wrong. Well, that's pretty much what happened every situation, guys. No matter what happened, no matter how safe I thought I was, I would get the whole stock list almost added, one bad apple, and have a mini wipeout. So we're going to avoid that this time around. And hopefully, through observing these fish, I can catch any of the major issues before they happen, and start learning how to medicate these fish and learning how to just grow in the hobby when it comes to quarantining and just protecting your investments, right? So one thing I do want to mention is going to be the proximity of this tank beside the main display. First thought was, hey, putting this in the other room, I don't want to see this PVC pipe beside my clean system, But honestly, with this being right beside the main display and the most common area I'm setting, it's perfect. I can observe these fish. I can see if they're flashing. I can see if anything's wrong with the system. I can watch the ammonia badge every day. I can really observe this tank and not miss anything. And I also want to mention, when it comes to acclimating, it's not going to be any problem running a 2-foot siphon hose, doing 10% water changes on that little QT tank, and really getting these guys ready for the main display's water when that time comes. But for now, these guys are getting 50 to 100% water changes with fresh water that has nothing to do with the display. I know in the last update I mentioned having a QT, and I know a lot of you guys were wondering, what's in here? What's the master plan? How these guys been doing since you started this process? Well, we're going to cover it really quick. These guys have been in here for a little over 2 weeks. As far as changes, I did add an additional air stone for, additional surface agitation, water movement on the back right. And as far as that, that's it, guys. We still have the same 8 fish that we started with 2 weeks ago. Haven't lost anyone, which is fantastic. And the stock list includes 4 azure damsels, 2 snowflake clownfish, 1 flamehawk fish, which kind of hides out, and then a Tamini tang. And a lot of you guys are going to think, man, that is a lot of fish for a 20-gallon system. I kind of thought it may have been, but once I put them in here and realized how small these guys were, meaning a bunch of 1-inch fish, and the biggest one being probably the flamehawk fish, which is around 2.5 inches or so. So everyone's small, small bio load for each fish, and ultimately being able to manage the water in this little tank has really been the key, guys. By managing it just with large water changes. My water change station being up and running makes it super easy and fast to do 100% water changes. You're talking 15 to 16 gallons of water, as needed. So when I first started this tank, did those water changes every day. Then it kind of slowly went to every other day. And now it's really based off how much I feed the tank. The longest I've went at this point is around 3 or 4 days before I noticed the amount of food, and leftover food and fish waste kind of starting to affect water quality. And by water quality, I mean the skimmer / air stone in the system. It literally starts a foam on top of the tank that you can see, and you open the tank, you can actually smell it. So that's kind of been my indicator of when to really start doing a water change in the tank. And ultimately, guys, whatever this master plan is, my first time doing this has worked because everyone is still here. No flashing, no spots, no signs of any stress or disease on the tank. And honestly, the way these guys are setting up territories and starting to bicker and fight a little amongst each other is really kind of let me know these guys are settled in and for the most part doing pretty well. So at this point, I'm ready to get these guys over to the main display. I'm just waiting a little while longer to make sure that the water is nice and, you know, mature enough for these guys, meaning I want it to be able to process at least 2 ppm of ammonia, you know, within 24 hours. Before I add these fish, considering I'm going to be adding 8 fish at the same time, I really want to make sure the tank's bio load is ready to handle these guys because, you know, last thing I'm going to do is take all this time babysitting these guys by hand to have one of them, you know, go in the tank and an ammonia spike happen and just lose them all over again. So that's pretty much the master plan for the QT. It's not really, you know, any rocket science, guys. I think I got lucky this time around, considering these fish came from an LFS that did treat them with a therapeutic amount of copper, and that also, you know, fed these guys deworming foods and kind of did a lot of the work for me. Me keeping these guys in the main QT is really just putting them in a situation to where if there was any hitting issues over the last few weeks, that it would show its ugly head. And so far, hey, everything's been perfect. So, you know, this batch of fish will be ready to go into the main display here soon. And the next batch of fish is probably going to be ordered online. Will probably be a RAS heavy batch, meaning if it's online, I probably will have to go through a different process, whether it be peroxide dips or different treatments. So like I said, first time doing the QT, guys, I am going to kind of do my best homework as possible, try to make the best educated decisions I can for me as far as what I think is right. And, you know, we're going to go from there, but just want to kind of give you guys an update and kind of give you the report on the QT, which in all accounts is going pretty damn good, my first attempt. And that's pretty much going to wrap up everything I wanted to cover in this episode for you guys. So once again, if you want the more exclusive, you know, everyday content, slide over to Instagram, give me a follow, because I do post there a little more often. And as always, hey, you guys like, comment, subscribe. You guys keep doing what y'all do. Y'all be easy and happy reefing. Peace.